Hello, adventurers! My name is Chance, welcome to my Spellbook, and thank you so much for tuning into the 17th episode of our background series. Today we're going to be going over very much a blank slate of a background, I suppose, if you'd prefer to call it that. In any case, we're going over Faction Agent. This particular background was released in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, and although a lot of people still love the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, it's kind of been overshadowed in terms of backgrounds by a lot of the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica stuff, although it is up to your Dungeon Master whether or not that is a book you use, so yeah. Now, the faction agent as a whole is really great if you have a very specific character concept in mind and your dungeon master is either very strict to the rules or if you're playing an adventures league. In any case, let's dive right into its description here. As a prelude to your adventuring career, you served as an agent of a particular faction. You might have operated openly or secretly, depending on the faction and its goals, as well as how those goals mesh with your own. Becoming an adventurer doesn't necessarily require you to relinquish membership in your faction, and it might enhance your status in the faction. Very kind of generic, right? And that's really the appeal to this background, is you can essentially go with whatever you want, whether or not it's a thieving based guild or maybe even a guild of assassins or maybe just general community volunteers or a local neighborhood watch program. Whatever, all of it is kind of caught in this broad net of faction agent, so feel free to go as nuts as you want. The Sword Coast Adventures Guide does have some base recommendations like the Harpers, Order of the Gauntlet, Emerald Enclave, Lord's Alliance, all that stuff that's found along the Sword Coast. However, I don't see any reason why you can't come up with your own. It won't really change the grand overarching stories of most campaigns, and it might even add some surprise elements into those worlds. In any case, let's move on to its mechanics here. The skill proficiencies are Insight, and one Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma skill of your choice. Really opening up what is possible here. Once again, meant to be used in terms of more of a blank slate. And under languages, you do get two of your choice. If you notice, there is no tool proficiency here, but I mean, depending on how good of a case you make to your dungeon master, they might be alright with that if you pick one of the lesser useful intelligence, wisdom, or charisma skills to kind of balance it out, or however they see fit. If you have any ideas on how to do that, be sure to let me know down beneath. And under equipment, you gain a badge or emblem of your faction, a copy of a sentimental faction text, a set of common clothes, and a pouch containing 15 GP, putting you just above that 10 GP average. Overall, very cool, very interesting. This is the first and really only background to behave like this in relation to the skill proficiencies, at least. A couple others do list off several different skills you can take, but this is the first one that's broad enough to really encompass all of them. It's really cool stuff. Now let's move, or at least the vast majority, I should say that. So now let's move on to its feature. The feature is called Safe Haven, and it's very reminiscent of a lot of the other features we've covered so far. As a faction agent, you have access to a secret network of supporters and operatives who can provide assistance on your adventures. You know a set of secret signs and passwords you can use to identify such operatives who can provide you with access to a hidden safe house, free room and board, or assistance finding information. These agents never risk their lives for you or risk revealing their true identities. Very reminiscent of the Acolyte or any member of the guild-based features. Essentially, the mechanical benefit outright is it gets you room and board, so you don't really need to worry about hotels or anything like that. And the more advanced usage of this is using this network you have access to approach certain tasks, quests, and objectives through a different lens or by different means. Now, if you notice, a lot of this is kind of generic and open to your own creativity, for lack of a better term, as so far as to say it doesn't name any specialities that your organization or faction would be best at, right? That's kind of up for you and your DM to talk through and determine and figure out exactly what kind of assistance they can provide and exactly what type of information they're going to have access to. Very cool stuff overall, though. Now let's take a look at an example of some suggested characteristics here. For the personality trait, I went with I see omens in every event and action. The gods try to speak to us, we just need to listen. Under ideal, I went with charity. I always try to help those in need, no matter what the personal cost, and this will put you a tick towards good. Under bond, I went with everything I do is for the common people. And for the flaw, I went with I judge others harshly and myself even more severely. Naturally, this particular set of characteristics would likely belong to some sort of religious order or community order, something to that effect, very much on the good side of things. And the Omen personality trait is rather interesting. It could make for some comedic moments, as well as maybe some more interesting interactions between party members. Maybe this character is, for example, very, very superstitious, and as a direct result has a very specific routine they follow at very specific intervals, and if they go without, maybe they impose disadvantage on themselves, like psyching themselves out or operate in a suboptimal way. Something to that effect might be pretty interesting. I also think it would be really funny to have a incredibly superstitious character that looks for meaning in everything actually speak with a god or maybe a liaison of a deity and have their superstitions kind of shattered. For example, if an angel came down and spoke on behalf of some benevolent lord, and the character happened to be a priest of such lord, and the character said something to the effect of, "Man, I look everywhere for your omens and I see them everywhere. The other day I saw a double rainbow in the sky and that's how I knew my lord was watching me." And the angel just kind of looks at the character as though they're crazy and says, "You know, we don't really do that. We have angels and magic and divination and ways to directly communicate with you, so I wouldn't really be too concerned about the weather." And just like completely shatter that character's view on the world. I think that'd be rather humorous, or maybe even potentially fatal to that character. Who knows, but the rest of the party is sure likely to get a kick out of it. In any case, let's move on to my personal thoughts. I don't actually have a ton to say about this, not because it's bad or great or anything like that, but just because it's really limited by your imagination, and that's about it. It was meant to be more or less a template to follow, where you can pursue almost whatever path you wanted, so long as you're part of a group organization, I suppose. But it really is interesting, and we do see this general theme in a couple of the other backgrounds as well, so this is kind of a good place to start from, then work yourself out from there. Just make sure you're working closely with your dungeon master, especially during a session 0, and kind of remind them periodically throughout, not in a direct way, but just in passing, so they're able to make sure it's still relevant to your character and maybe the plot as a whole, depending on how far they want to go with it. In any case, let me know what you think of the faction agent down beneath in the comment section. Be sure to mention any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, ideas, or stories of your own. And if you'd like to get your hands on a free one-shot, please feel free to do so over at the Guild Hall. Just use code WELCOME and it's all yours. That being said, I hope you have a great day, and as always, happy adventuring.